In my personal opinion, I feel like David Fincher is one of the greatest directors, not just of his generation, but of all time history. He is a master when it comes to tension, when it comes to pacing, and also when it comes to putting small details in his films. If you look at the behind the scenes footage for his movies, sometimes there's CGI in scenes that you would never have thought had any CGI in them. That is a true stroke of genius when it comes to a filmmaker, and I think that David Fincher is one of the top tier people in his craft. And with The Killer now on Netflix for the past couple weeks or so, I feel like it's an appropriate time to do a top 10 list of his best work so far in his filmography. To start off at number 10, I have to go with The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Now, this is his prettiest film he's ever directed. It is so beautiful to look at, and the cinematography in this movie is great. I love the set design. I love the character design of Benjamin Button. The clothes that Brad Pitt wears throughout the generations is so cool. But I feel like there's something missing in this movie, and I think it's because this is the most non-David Fincher film that David Fincher's ever made. He's known for directing like colder, thriller type of movies, and this film is a wide-spanning life story of a person that is aging backwards, and it's a romantic drama, but I just feel like it doesn't have that David Fincher touch in terms of the directing. But great performances, beautiful music, beautiful cinematography. It's just not as good as the other films, in my personal opinion, in his filmography so far. At number 9, I have to go with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I know a lot of people say that the remake is not as good as the original. To be fair, I've never seen the original, but this remake is pretty solid for a first-time viewer of this story, like myself. And the performances from Rooney Mara and Daniel Craig are really great here. The cinematography is top-notch. The editing is top-notch. I love the vibe of the movie. The wintry setting just makes it really cool to watch. But again, in comparison to the other films in his filmography, I don't find this one as engaging, in my personal opinion. But it's a solid movie, and I gave it, I think, a 7 out of 10 on Letterboxd, or 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So I still liked it, but not as much as his other films. And number 8, I have to go with Panic Room. Panic Room is a solidly made film. It's expertly directed. Some camera angles and some camera tricks that are used in this film are really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. And interestingly enough, originally Nicole Kidman was supposed to play Jodie Foster's character, but she had to drop out of the film because of an onset injury. Hayden Panettiere was supposed to be Kristen Stewart's character, but she dropped out of the film as well. So this could have been a way different movie if both of those stars stayed on, but Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart are excellent in this movie. Also, Forrest Whitaker and Jared Leto are really good in this movie too. I think that this film is, even though it's at number 8, it's still super solid, and if anyone else directed this movie, this could be one of their top 3 movies that they ever made in their whole entire careers. But that shows you the strength and the quality of David Fincher's filmography. Super solid movie, very thrilling, but again, in comparison to the other films that I'm going to list out in this list, not as good as those movies, but still, in my personal opinion, it's like an 8 out of 10. So for an 8th place movie in the top 10, for it to be 8 out of 10, super solid. At number 7, I have to go with The Killer. Again, this might be recency bias, but I really enjoyed The Killer, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. In my review, I said that it's expertly directed, cinematography is great, the performance from Michael Fassbender is cold and calculated and very, very good. But, again, in comparison to his other thrillers, there's something missing here. And I think it's because he hasn't really directed a thriller since Gone Girl, so pretty much 9 years later he's directed a thriller. But The Killer is still an entertaining film. I liked it a lot. But, again, in comparison to his other movies, not as good. But still, at number 7 for 9 out of 10, really, really good. At number 6, I gotta go with The Game. Imagine this. The Game happened in between Seven and Fight Club. That is an insane 3-film run for David Fincher. I really enjoyed The Game. I know a lot of people criticize the ending with its twist, but I thought it is an amazing and very interesting karmatic tale. I don't know if karmatic is a word, but I don't care. It is a really good movie. Michael Douglas does the same kind of character that he's usually done in the 90s and early 2000s, but I think that this film showed his acting range a little more than those other films. And again, I enjoyed it a lot. I know a lot of people didn't like the ending. I enjoyed it, and it's a really good karma-based tale. At number 5, I gotta go with Gone Girl. I'll tell you a funny story. So when this movie came out in 2014, I went to watch it at my local theater, and I was the only single person in the theater. Everyone was a couple in the movie theater. It was like a pretty late show, so whatever. After the film, everyone that came into the movie together was walking separately and looking at each other in a funny way. I was laughing. I had a blast with this movie. It's a very good, very interesting murder mystery film. And Rosamund Pike was robbed of an Academy Award for her performance in this movie. Her character is so nuanced and so layered and so interesting. Her character is one of the most interesting characters in all of David Fincher's filmography. That opening shot, and then when you see that opening shot recreated for the last shot, just the way that things are changed in terms of perspective when you look at those shots, brilliant. I kind of got sad when David Fincher didn't direct anything for quite a while after this movie. I know he went into television, but this was his last good thriller in a long time. The Killer is still a good movie, but Gone Girl is his last good thriller, in my personal opinion. Number 4, I gotta go with Seven. Now, I know a lot of people would consider Seven to be one of his top 3 films in his whole entire career. It is the movie that gave him his huge break and pretty much put David Fincher on the map. But, I don't know, when I rewatched it recently, I'd say that the other 3 films that I'm gonna list in his top 3 are just slightly better than Seven. Seven's still a 10 out of 10 for me, but the other 3 films are a little bit more enjoyable or a little bit more interesting in my personal opinion. If you've never seen Seven before, there's so much copycat movies since this movie, but this is the original, this is the blueprint, and this is a very dark and very interesting murder mystery film, and it is very gruesome without even showing any signs of violence. It is interesting, it is cold-hearted, and excellently directed, acted, scored, and shot. It's just and edited. It's one of the best films of the 90s. Please do watch it if you still haven't seen Seven somehow. Number 3, I gotta go with Fight Club. Now, some of you might be saying, how could Fight Club be not 1 or 2? Again, these are just my personal opinions, okay? I really enjoyed Fight Club. Again, this is another 10 out of 10 in his whole entire career. Excellent movie. Everything about this movie is just pristine and really, really amazingly done. And this is kind of like a fun thing to do. Go on YouTube and type in Fight Club PSAs. They kind of parody those PSAs that they used to do in the early 2000s and 90s. Really funny. And yeah, a really darkly humorous film and really well shot and really well edited and really well acted. Shall I say action drama? It's really hard. This is a very multi-layered, multi-genre film, and it's just brilliant. Again, if you somehow have never seen Fight Club, please do. In my opinion, it's one of his top 3 best works. But there's still 2 other films that I feel are better than Fight Club. Number 2 is The Social Network. Out of the movies that he's directed that are not R-rated, this is his best work. It is a trailblazing movie. At the time, social media was not as it is today. And for this movie to come out when Facebook was still on the rise and being very critical and very honest about like how things were possibly behind the scenes is very interesting. This movie is an expertly done film in every sort of category. It is, I think, David Fincher's most critically acclaimed film. It's probably one of his most well-written films of all time. And yeah, just amazing, amazing work from top to bottom, from start to finish. This movie could have been boring and really bad, but it ended up becoming one of the greatest films of the decade. And in many directors' opinions, including Quentin Tarantino's, probably the greatest of that decade that it came out in. But in my personal opinion, his number 1 film is Zodiac. Zodiac is one of the most underrated films in the last few decades. It is David Fincher's best work. If Seven was focused on the killer's motive and in terms of how the killer did things and how the police officers are hunting him down, Zodiac is about the failures of how the detectives and the people were trying to hunt down this killer or possible killers. Zodiac is fascinating. I still find new things about this movie every time I watch it. Everything about this movie is incredible. It is heart-wrenchingly sad because of the ending and how it just ends on a open note. But incredible movie. His best ever work, in my personal opinion.